when I look back at the transcripts, I realized, wow, we spent most of that time talking about safety and the design of that carbon fiber sub. I mean, in tremendous detail.
On August 5th, 2025, after nearly 2 years of investigation, the U.S. Coast Guard's Marine Board of Investigation released its long-awaited final report into the catastrophic implosion of the Titan submersible, which claimed 5 lives during a dive to the Titanic wreck site in June 2023. The report does more than explain what went wrong. It exposes a trifold crisis: a critically flawed vessel design, a permissive and toxic corporate culture, and regulatory loopholes that allowed OceanGate, the company behind Titan, to sidestep oversight and safety protocols. Coast Guard Chair Jason Neubauer did not mince words. Quote, "This marine casualty and the loss of 5 lives was preventable," he declared, pointing directly at OceanGate's failures in design, maintenance, and certification, as well as a cultivation of an environment where dissent was discouraged and oversight was intentionally circumvented. The Titan disaster and its global shockwaves. On June 18, 2023, OceanGate's experimental submersible Titan lost contact with its surface support vessel, the Polar Prince, just under 2 hours into a dive to the wreck of the RMS Titanic, resting nearly 13,000 feet beneath the North Atlantic. On board were 5 men: OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush, British businessman Hamish Harding, French Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet, and Pakistani father and son passengers Shahzada and Suleiman Dawood. Despite an extensive multinational search and rescue effort led by the U.S. Coast Guard, hopes dimmed as days passed. On June 22nd, debris was discovered near the Titanic site, confirming what experts feared. Titan had suffered a catastrophic implosion, killing all aboard instantly. The tragedy stunned the world, not only because of the high-profile victims, but also because Titan had long been promoted as a vessel of cutting-edge innovation. OceanGate marketed its carbon fiber-hulled craft as a revolutionary way to make the deep ocean more accessible to private exploration and tourism. But within hours of the implosion, questions surfaced about OceanGate's safety practices, regulatory shortcuts, and defiance of industry norms. Former employees and industry experts had already raised alarms, and lawsuits revealed prior disputes over Titan's design and testing. Families of the victims demanded answers, while lawmakers called for tighter oversight of private submersible ventures. The disaster sparked a global reckoning about the balance between innovation and safety in extreme exploration. Deep-sea technology experts likened the case to earlier preventable tragedies, from the Challenger shuttle explosion to the Concorde crash, where bold ambition outpaced safety safeguards. The Coast Guard's findings.
You think about all the risks that might be involved in whatever exploration adventure that you're going on. And then you see if you don't have an appetite for those risks, then you might not go ahead. You may try and mitigate those by bringing in some expertise from outside. You might have other risks or dangers that could be mitigated by changing the time of when you go out there.
After nearly 2 years of testimony, evidence review, and technical analysis, the Coast Guard's final report painted a grim picture of OceanGate's practices. At its core, investigators concluded that Titan's unconventional carbon fiber hull design, untested in the extreme conditions of repeated deep ocean dives, was the primary cause of the implosion. Unlike traditional steel or titanium hulls, which have decades of proven performance, Titan's hybrid construction degraded rapidly under immense pressure. Repeated dives likely introduced microscopic flaws, which compounded until the hull catastrophically failed. But the technical flaws were only part of the story. The report described a toxic workplace culture at OceanGate, where dissenting voices were silenced and safety warnings ignored. Former engineers testified that raising concerns about Titan's integrity often led to retaliation or dismissal, and the company's leadership framed regulatory resistance as a point of pride. OceanGate's decision to operate outside conventional classification society rules, effectively avoiding independent certification, was cited as a critical failure of accountability. Beyond corporate culture, the Coast Guard emphasized regulatory blind spots. Because OceanGate operated Titan largely in international waters and framed its expeditions as research rather than commercial passenger services, the vessel was able to slip through overlapping jurisdictions. The report noted that existing maritime law failed to adequately address private submersibles carrying paying passengers, creating dangerous gray zones of oversight. Coast Guard Chair Jason Neubauer summarized the findings bluntly. Quote, "This was not an accident in the traditional sense. It was the predictable outcome of choices made by OceanGate." 17 recommendations. The Coast Guard's Marine Board of Investigation didn't stop at fault finding. Its report issued 17 recommendations designed to close the gaps that allowed Titan to operate unchecked. These proposals span technical, cultural, and regulatory reforms. Among the most significant are calls for mandatory classification and certification of submersibles intended for passenger use, regardless of whether they operate in domestic or international waters. This would prevent future companies from bypassing oversight by framing trips as research expeditions or relying on jurisdictional loopholes. The report also urges stronger coordination among federal agencies, including the Coast Guard, National Transportation Safety Board, and international maritime bodies, to ensure consistent safety standards. Another key recommendation addresses corporate accountability. The report highlights the need for clearer whistleblower protections within high-risk industries so that engineers and staff can raise safety concerns without fear of reprisal. Training standards for submersible pilots, emergency preparedness protocols, and transparency requirements for marketing extreme tourism were also underscored. Collectively, these recommendations present a roadmap for preventing similar tragedies. The human toll. For families of Titan's victims, the Coast Guard's findings confirmed what many had suspected from the beginning, that the deaths of their loved ones were not a freak accident, but the result of avoidable negligence. Statements released in response to the report reflect both grief and determination. The Dawood family, who lost 48-year-old Shahzada and his 19-year-old son Suleiman, expressed heartbreak that OceanGate had ignored repeated warnings. The family of Hamish Harding, a veteran adventurer, called for international reforms to ensure no other family suffers such a preventable loss. Relatives of French Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet highlighted the cruel irony of his fate. Known as Mr. Titanic for his decades of deep-sea research, Nargeolet had survived countless dives before boarding Titan. His family lamented that his expertise could not shield him from what they called a company's reckless gamble. For many, the most bitter truth was that concerns had been raised publicly years before Titan's final dive, yet they went unheeded. Beyond the families, the disaster left a lasting imprint on the public's imagination. The search for Titan, broadcast in real time to millions around the world, unfolded like a high-stakes drama, culminating in the devastating discovery of implosion. It exposed the risks of luxury adventure tourism, where wealthy clients pay vast sums for access to extreme frontiers. The public conversation has since shifted towards whether such ventures should be allowed without rigorous safeguards and whether personal risk can ever justify systemic negligence. For the victim's family, however, the debate is personal. As one relative told reporters, "We cannot bring them back, but we can demand that this never happens again." Industry and expert reactions. The Coast Guard's report has reverberated across the worlds of maritime engineering, exploration, and adventure tourism. Industry veterans described it as both unsurprising and sobering. Many experts had long warned that OceanGate's rejection of classification society oversight was reckless. With the official findings now public, those concerns have crystallized into a broader reckoning for private deep-sea ventures. Exploration companies offering extreme experiences, from spaceflight to polar expeditions, are reassessing their own safety protocols. Several organizations have already announced plans to seek independent certification and classification of their vehicles, anticipating that governments may soon make such steps mandatory. Leaders in the submersible industry welcome the Coast Guard's recommendations as a chance to restore credibility to a field that, in the wake of Titan, faces shaken public confidence. Adventure tourism, a sector that has expanded rapidly over the past decade, is under fresh scrutiny. Critics argue that companies have marketed high-risk experiences as glamorous and cutting-edge, while downplaying inherent dangers. Supporters counter that exploration has always carried risk, and that clients are often willing to accept those risks in pursuit of extraordinary experiences. Still, Titan has forced the industry to confront a pressing question. Where is the line between informed risk and unacceptable negligence? Insurance companies and investors are also taking note. Insurers may demand more rigorous certifications before underwriting future expeditions, while funding for experimental craft may dry up unless safety standards are demonstrably prioritized. In short, Titan's implosion could reshape the economics of extreme exploration as much as its regulation. Now it's time to hear from you. Would you rather be in a deep sea exploration or one in space? Let us know in the comments section below.